Welcome to BricsCAD. In this video, I'll make this simple front view of a single cylinder engine block, and this one is a simplified version of the front view of an engine block, and a lot of details have been removed to keep this drawing simple. And I'll also make this in BricsCAD. So let's get started. Now before we begin this drawing, I want you to change some of the settings in your software. So the first setting is this polar tracking. So this polar tracking should be on. Second thing is object snap. It should be active as well. And then we'll also use dynamic input. So if it is not active, you can activate it. When dynamic input is on, you will see these kind of tooltips. So I'll just start line tool, and now you can see I've got this angle and length, all these things active here. So you'll see these tooltips when the dynamic input is on. So if it is not on, you can just activate it here from the status bar. Now if you are following along this on AutoCAD, then you can activate dynamic input using F12 function key. So if you don't see these kind of tooltips, you can just press F12 function key to activate the dynamic input. Now, so with that, let's start the line tool again. So line, I'll click at a point and I'll make the first line of length 50 unit. So I'll type 50, enter, and there we are. We have got the first line. Now I'll press enter, and now using this as a reference, I'll make the rest of the geometry. So once again, I'll go to line, this point, and this tiny length is 4, enter. Now this angle here is 45 degrees along this clockwise direction from horizontal. So I'll first add the angle, and for that I'll press my tab key so that the highlighted option switches to angle. Then I'll type 45, tab key again, and this length is 3. So 3 and enter. There we are. Now this length, okay, now here it is. So as you can see, when I'm just moving it perfectly in this vertical direction, I don't see any kind of tracking vector, and that's completely fine. You can activate it just by using the polar mode, but here I'll make mostly horizontal and vertical lines. So instead of just adding it and activating it, I'll just go to ortho. That will let me make my drawing only along horizontal and vertical direction. So using ortho, I can just do it very quickly. So I'll activate ortho now, and the next line I'll make is of length 2.4, enter, and I'll exit this here. Now I just need to make a circle here. So I'll go to circle and I'll select 2-point circle, this point, and then right along this direction I'll make a circle of diameter 7.2 and enter. So 7.2 is the diameter from this point to this, and we can start the line tool again. So now I'll track this point carefully, click here, and now this length again is 8.8, enter, and once again 2-point circle from this point, and right here it should be 7.2 again. And now line tool. So again I'll track this, click here, and this is 26.8. all right, one more circle, again 2-point circle right here, and this should be, as you know, 7.2. and one more line. So I'll go to line again, tracking this point. I'll just make it of length 10.28. all right, we are done. I'll press enter to exit this. Okay, so this is just the basic shape. Now let's add more detail to this drawing, and for that I'll just go to this trim tool and press enter and trim all these extra arcs. So we just don't need that, so I'll just delete it. Now we have the arc that we need. Okay, the next thing is circles here. And to do that, to add the circles, I'll first start with a construction line. So I'll go to line, I'll click right on this midpoint, and then I'll make a line of length 19.5 units. So 19.5 and enter. There we are. Using this as a reference, I'll make center radius circle. So center radius, this point here, and now the radius of circle is 17.5. So 17.5, enter. Enter again to repeat the circle, the same point, and this radius is 16. So 16, enter. Okay, that's done. Now we just need to add these details. So for that I'll use offset. So here is the offset. and the offset distance is 6. Enter. I'll click here, click towards left, here towards right. So we've got these two offsets. Now we can trim it. So once again, I'll go to trim and enter. Don't forget to press enter key right after you select trim, else BricsCAD won't just trim the objects. So in this case, select the trim, press enter. Now you can just trim it. So I just don't need these, this, and these are not required. Okay, that's gone. Now we can add the fillets here. So the fillet tool is right here. So right here we have chamfer and fillet. I'll select fillet, and the fillet radius is 2. So right after selecting fillet tool, go to radius, and the radius should be 2. So 2 and enter. Now click on this circle and then this line. There we are. Press enter. Now you don't need to add the radius because BricsCAD will use the last radius which we selected. So that's 2, and there we are. We have got this. Now we don't need this line anymore, so I'll delete it. And we now need 4 circles here. So let's start with again a construction line. And using this center as a reference, I'll make a construction line at an angle of 45 degrees. Now, as you can see, it's just making it horizontally or vertically. So I'll deactivate ortho and activate polar once again. Now the angle is 45. So I'll type 45 and press tab key. And while we can use any length in this case, actually I just added length as 45. So that's also fine. I'll just now type 45 for angle as well. And I'll press enter key. So I've got a line of length 45 and angle also 45, but that hardly matters because I just need this intersection point. That's it. So we can just later delete this. Okay, so now that we have intersection point, let's go to circle. And I'll start with this intersection point right here. And the radius of this circle is 1.2. So 1.2, enter. Enter again. And now the second radius is 0.8. There we are. We don't need this anymore, so I'll delete it, this line. And now we can make arrays, multiple copies of these two circles right along this circular path. Now to do that, I'll go to this array tool, click here and select polar array. Select these two tiny circles and press enter. Now the center of array will be center of this circle. So select the center, and we've got all of these arrays. So currently you can see we have 6 objects that we don't need. We just need 4 copies. So I'll go to items here on the command line, and in number of items I'll type 4, enter. Now that's exactly where we need it. So with that I'll press enter and we are done. We've got the arrayed copies. Okay, now here's a problem. I created this array, but when I select any of these objects, BricsCAD is selecting everything in this drawing. Now if you want it to remain separate, then you need to explode it first. So let's just do that. Let's explode it. So I'll select this explode tool, select this array, any object of this array, press enter. Now all of these circles are separate. They are no longer connected as a single array. And we can now do the cleanup work. So once again, trim, enter, and a little bit of cleanup here. So we just don't need these. And in a similar way, I'll just clean it up from all of these circles. So here we are. Now it's completely cleaned up. Okay, now it's time to make other things here. So once again, I'll start with construction line, and I'll go to line tool and I'll maybe select this center. And I'll just add a single straight line of approximate length. It should be just long enough. It should be longer than this line at least. So that's what the idea here is. So now with that, I'll go to offset, and I'll first start with offset distance of 8. Enter, and I'll make an offset of this on left side and on the right side. Okay, the second offset distance is of 2 units. So I'll go to offset again, and let's type offset distance of 2, and I'll make an offset of this line right here. Okay, that's the second offset. And I'll add a third offset as well. So I'll go to offset, and this time the offset distance is 2 again. So 2, enter. This one should be offset here and here. So we've got all the offsets that we need. Now let's add the horizontal line here. So I'll just Well, in this case, before I add that horizontal line, I think it's better if we just make a mirror image of this part over here. So let's just select it all. So I'll just select all of these here, excluding this line, and I'll just make a mirror image of this. So I'll go to mirror, I'll click on this midpoint, and then I'll click right here on the center and press enter, and I've got the mirror image here. Now with that mirror image, we are ready to create our horizontal line. So I'll go to line tool, I'll click on this center of this arc, and then center of this arc to make our horizontal line. Now these are all mostly construction lines which we'll later delete, but for now we just need it for creating the exact geometries that we need. So the next thing will be offset once again. So I'll go to offset, and this offset distance is 13.87. Now I'll click here, and the offset is in this direction. Okay, done. Okay, now the second offset will be of 1 unit. So I'll go to offset, I'll add 1 as the offset distance, and I'll select this and I'll offset it right here. There we are, we've got the offset. Now the next thing which we are going to do is a little bit of cleanup work. So before we do that, I'll maybe add 1 more offset. So I'll go to offset, and the distance will be 2, and I'll just offset this line as well. Now we are ready to do the cleanup work. Let's delete this line. Let's delete this one. Okay, now I'll add, well, trim tool. Okay, trim tool, enter, and I'll trim these two as well. And we can now delete these lines too. These construction lines are also no longer required. Okay, the next thing is rounded edges right here. To do that, I'll go to fillet, and with fillet selected and using any radius, I'll just click on these 2 lines, and there we are. So that's a special case of fillet tool. You can add these kind of semicircular lines simply by using fillet command. So if the lines are parallel, fillet will add these semicircular edges. You don't need to add any radius for this. It will automatically detect the radius and apply it properly. So now with that, we are ready to make multiple copies of this. So in this case, I'll go to array, and I'll select this thing entirely and enter. Now I just need to make an array in linear direction, and I just selected the circular one, so that's not going to work in this case. So let's just do it again. Rectangular array, that's what we need. So now I'll select it again and enter. There we are, we have got this array, as you can see. So this is just an array which we may not need here in this case. So we need array with just 1 single column. So I'll first go to columns, and I'll change that to 1 and enter. Now we have 1 single column. Now rows, we need 9 rows of this. But before we do that, we just need to, well, add the distance between column, which is essentially 0 in this case. So I'll just press enter. Now the next thing is row. So let's go to row, and number of row is 9. So 9 and enter. So we've got 9 rows here. Now the distance between row is 3.6. So I'll type 3.6 as distance and press enter. Now I'll go to this number of row one more time, and here number of row is 9. I'll press enter, and in this case the length is 3.6, as you can see. Now as you can see, with 3.6 length, it's just making it right above that selected object. We just want it below this. So instead of adding 3.6, I'll type minus 3.6 as the distance, and now the direction will reverse. So everything will be made right underneath that original object, and that's what we want. So instead of using a positive value of this gap between different rows, I'll use a negative value that will make it in this downward direction. That's what we need for this example. So with that, I'll just press enter, and we have the array. Now just like the previous example, here also the array is associative. This kind of array is called associative, where when you select one object, everything is selected. We don't want it, so I'll explode this one too. So I'll select this array and click on explode, and that's it. Now this array is exploded. Okay, now we need another cleanup work. Let's do it. So once again, I'll go to trim tool and enter, and I'll start from this one. So here we don't need this, we don't need this, we don't need this. That's not required. And here we just need, well, almost everything for now. And now we just need to do a little bit of cleanup here as well. So here the first thing that I'm going to clean up is this. So we just don't need anything here, and right after this also we don't need anything. So maybe this one we do need for now. So inside these we don't need it, so I'll just clean this thing, and we don't need it here, and we don't need it here. So these are some of the things that you can clean up properly, and we can actually clean this thing up as well, because that's also not required. It's no longer required here, and so is the case with these two, no longer required. And now I'll press escape key and I'll delete this set of line. It's not needed here, and these lines from here right underneath this. Okay, so we've got two separate areas here. Clearly you can see that. Now we'll do even more cleanup work. So again, I'll go to trim and enter, and now I'll just trim all of these lines from inside these small areas. So I'll just clean it up properly like this. Okay, there we are. It's now cleaned up properly. Also, we can just clean this area. So here we don't need this. We'll later delete these two. So again, here same thing. All right, and we can delete these. Similarly, we can delete these two arcs from here. Now let's go to line tool and add another line connecting these two, and we can delete these two now. So go to trim, enter, get rid of this. Okay, so most of these things are now ready. We just need to add even more details in this drawing, and to do that I'll first start with fillet again. So I'll go to fillet, and on this edge I'll add the first fillet. Again, press enter, fillet this edge. We'll also get rid of these two just to make it clean. So let's go to trim, enter, clean these two things. All right. Now let's add even more details. So I'll go to line tool and I'll just connect these two midpoints here, right here. And then again line tool, and here I'll add a distance of 12.28 and enter. So at that distance I'll add, well, this single line here. Now using this as a reference, we can make all the other geometries that we need. So I'll go to circle, and right here I'll make the very first circle of radius 2, enter again, the same center, and the radius this time is 1.6, and we are done. Now we'll make the rectangle. So I'll go to rectangle, and we can now make the rectangle maybe somewhere here. So now this length is 8 and tab key, height is 6, enter. There is the rectangle. Now I'll just move it right here. So I'll select this, move tool, and I'll move it with respect to the midpoint, this geometric center. So I'll just track it. Here is the geometric center, and I'll move it right here. Okay, now we can get rid of all these construction lines yet again. So here it is. It's now cleaned up, and just a couple of fillets. So fillet tool, and the fillet radius is 1. So I'll go to radius 1, enter, and I just need to apply fillet on all the 4 vertices. So I'll select polyline, and I'll just select this. There we are. It just applied the fillet everywhere. Now again, cleanup is required. So I'll go to trim, enter, and I'll just clean it up like this here. And we can delete these 2 lines. Okay, that's done. Now we need to make a mirror image of this. So I'll select it all entirely, only these geometries, and I'll select mirror tool, and using, well, the points here and these midpoints are no longer available here because we just trimmed it. So I'll use another midpoint, which is here. So this midpoint to this midpoint, and press enter. There we are. We've got the exact mirror copy. Once again, a little bit of cleanup is required. So here it is, and here it is, and we can delete it. There. So we have added this detail as well. Now, as you can see, our drawing is almost finished. We just need to add this part here and maybe trim this one. So let's quickly do that as well. So I'll just trim this part of the drawing, and this part is finished. Now let's go to this bottom part. Now to do that, once again, I'll start with, well, a line tool. So line, and I'll add a straight line of length 11.6. All right, now I'll go to offset, and the offset distance here is 27.88. So 27.88, enter. Now I'll offset this line right here, also on this side. Now we'll make one more offset. So I'll go to offset, and the second distance is 30.88, enter. And here we are. I'll select this one, and the offset will be right here, and then offset this one right here. Now let's go to the line tool, and using this point right here from the midpoint, I'll just add a line up to this last one, and I'll just make this part here, and then we can maybe make the mirror image, or we can just make at least one of the complete segments. I think that will be easier, so I'll just add maybe the second line too. So now I've got these two, and instead of adding these two, maybe now I'll add just one single line from this point to this point. Okay, so we have a single line connecting these two. Okay, now once again, let's go to offset, and this offset distance is 1. So 1, enter, and this should be offset here in this downward direction. And let's add the fillets again. So I'll go to fillet, and here the fillet is of this semicircle, so we just don't need to add the radii once again. So here is the fillet that's added. Now with that, we can again make an array. So let's go to array, select this thing entirely, and enter. Now once again, we'll use the same thing, and as you can see, I just missed these two, so I'm gonna just press escape, control Z, and I'll select this entire thing. So I'll just make sure that these small arcs are also selected. Now once again, array, and rectangular array in this case. Now number of columns should be 1. Distance hardly matters. The number of row, it should be 4. So 4, enter. And the gap is 3.6. But as you know, it is in the downward direction, so it should be minus 3.6 and enter. There we are, it's added properly now, and press enter. So now that we have added here, we can delete all of these construction geometries. So this, and I'll just leave it for now, but these two I'll delete it. And there is a tiny gap here that I'll merge, so using extend tool, so we'll use that as well. But for now, all these construction geometries, we can just get rid of it. And now I'll go to extend, which is right here, press enter. I'll extend this line, I'll extend this line, it will extend up to the next boundary, which is right here. Okay, finally, we just need to add this part here, and to do that, once again, I'll add another construction line. So let's go to line tool, and from here, from this midpoint, I'll add it of length 2.3. Okay, we are done. Now let's add 2 circles. So circle tool right here, the first circle has radius of 3.4, enter, and the second circle has the radius of 1.4, so 1.4, enter. Okay, so these are the 2 radii, and now we can delete this construction line. Also, this one is associative array, because if we are selecting it, it's selecting everything, so we just need to explode it first. So explode this array, done. Now let's trim it. So I'll go to trim again, enter, and I'll trim this part of the drawing, this part too, and we'll do the cleanup work from inside of this. So here, all these parts should be cleaned up. There we are, we can just delete these two. And we are almost finished. We just need a little bit of cleanup right here. So again, I'll press enter after selecting trim, and I'll do the cleanup right here. And this is our final drawing without the gradient. Let's now add gradient to finish this drawing. To add the gradient, I'll just go to this gradient tool here. On the draw panel, we have hatch and also the gradient. So I'll just select this gradient tool. And in this case, I'll start with this gradient, the second one, the cylindrical one, because that's what the effect here is. So cylindrical kind of effect. Now we obviously need 2 colors, but we just need to change the colors. So this color is blue. I'll select this, and I'll just go to index color, and I'll select this gray color here, index 252, and okay. The second one is white. I'll leave that. And with that selected, we just need to select the boundaries, or we can just select the pick points. In this case, I think pick point should be good. So I'll select pick point, and now right inside this area, click and just keep on clicking inside all the areas where you want to add this gradient. So I just want to add it right here in all these areas. Actually, I just don't want to add it in this last area. So I'll just press enter, and I'll select remove boundary entities, and I'll just select this boundary, enter. Okay, so these are the only areas where I just need to add it, and click OK. Let's do it again. Gradient, same thing, no changes, and I'll add it inside these 3 areas and enter. And click OK. We just need to add one more thing here, that's the hatch pattern. So I'll just go to hatch and I'll select solid hatch pattern, and in color I'll select, well, I'll go to select color and I'll select a dark, well, gray color, maybe index of 252, or maybe you can even select a darker one. That's what I'm going to be selecting because 252 is already used for this one. So I'll just select a darker tone here and I'll click OK, pick point, and I'll just apply it right inside these areas and press enter and OK, and we are done. So here is the final drawing. So this is how you can make this simple front view of 1-cylinder engine block. And if you have any questions related to this, let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to share this video. I'll see you soon in another one.